We have a dynamic array of objects that has been rendered from the client. What we'd like to be able to do is dynamically interact with this, right? So for instance, I'd like to be able to remove a particular user from here if I click on the delete. Right now, there's no, if I click on this, right, it's not even connected to any click event. But even if it were, we would need to add additional meta information about who are you deleting, right? So for instance, it could be that we use the ID, the unique identifier of the user, as part of that click event, right? So that we know who's being removed. So let's work on that. What we could do is at this delete button, we can add an event handler to this delete button. We can say delete button, click, and this will be delete user. So there will be a function that handles this, perhaps down here. So function delete user, and this could say alert delete, right? Just so that we make sure that if we click on the delete button, notice that we have an alert. So all these delete buttons are now mapped to that click event, yes? But we need to be able to distinguish which one are you deleting. So what we could do is that here, as part of the event handling mechanism in jQuery, the event handler is passed an argument, right? An argument is passed alongside to that function, right? And if we console log event, right? And we look at the event and the console, and we click on this. Notice that this is the event object. If we explore it a little bit, one of the elements here is this one, current target. See that? If I hover over it, it highlights the button that was actually clicked. All right, so that's bound to the DOM elements that generated that event. Okay, so if we could add some meta information about that object, we could maybe retrieve that object, right, and then retrieve the meta information about that object. Okay, so let's do that. What we could do here is at the delete button, right, we could perhaps add the ID of the user as part of the meta information about that button. We can say delete button set an attribute. So dot attribute, that's a function, that's a jQuery function that allows us to manipulate attributes on the element. The element has his name is button, but then you can have any number of attributes that configure that element, right? Maybe an on-click, the size, the color, the style, the class, right? And one of the things that we could set is maybe an attribute called ID, right? As we mentioned last week, right? ID allows you to uniquely identify an element. So we can set its value to user.id. Yes? Right now, if I do this again and click on this delete, and I take a look at the current target, notice now that the element's name, right? The element is button #10. That #10 is the ID of the element, right? If I explore this and I inspect it, I notice that the element now has an ID of 10. See that? Right. So now I can use that. If I retrieve that ID now from within my event handler, I can say, you want to remove the user number 10. So let's do that. So this is being passed over here. I can retrieve the current target. So event.current target. That's the button. Now I got the button. Right? I'll convert it into a jQuery button. So now this is not the low-level DOM object. This is a DOM object has been wrapped around with jQuery, so I can use a high-level API as opposed to the low-level DOM API. Yes, right. So I'm wrapping it in a jQuery object, and so now I can do things such as retrieve the ID from button.attribute and then ID. Okay. Remember, these functions they behave differently depending on the number of arguments, right? If you give it more arguments, typically it means that it's a write operation. If you give it less arguments, typically it's a read operation. Okay, so here I am reading, I am retrieving the ID, whereas over here I was writing to the ID. Okay. All right, now that I have the ID, I can now perhaps go out to the server and say, hey server, I know now the user that I want to remove. Okay, so here's an HTTP request to remove that user. Okay, so let's do that. We can go out to a URL, and the URL will be something like /API/user/ and then the ID of the user that I want to remove. Again, this is following RESTful syntax that is /user. User is the entity that I am manipulating, right? The type of object I'm manipulating, right? Tomorrow it'll be courses or sessions or enrollments, users, right? So I can CRUD users. Yes, here I am going to delete a user, right? The D in CRUD. So that's the API I'm hitting. So we're going to do a fetch. I'm going to go out to the URL, but I don't want to retrieve this particular user, right? I want to delete this user, right? So the method that I'm going to use is that I'm going to use a delete method, right? That's, again, delete is one of the many HTTP methods that are available. What else do I need? Probably that's it. I'm just passing that along, the ID. At some point, this will come back with a then. What do we want to do after we've removed it? Right? Typically, what we'd like to be able to do is update the DOM. Right? The DOM now has one too many users. The user is no longer there. Right? So now the DOM is stale. Right? It's behind. So we need to re-update it. Okay, so the easiest thing to do is to just go fetch everything again, right? Find all users. Find all users again, right? So basically this, what we had done earlier, right? So it's in the then, we can do a function and do that, right? We can do we did an anonymous function, right, that is going to call, find all users, and then is going to render all users, right? Meaning it's going to go back to the server, go fetch all the users, right? Hopefully with one less user in there, yes, and it'll re-render the users brand new. Okay. All right, let's try it out. Let's see if this blows up. Let's go to a network. We can clear this out, and let's delete. All right, so notice that it went out to the server. The server came back saying, there is no delete. Okay, you never implemented the delete on this, right? The URL went out correctly. Notice that it went out correctly. There is a get API user 9. Is that what you meant? No, that's not what I meant. I want to delete. Okay, well, there is no delete. Okay, let's go back to the server side, and let's implement on the server side. We want something like this, right? That URL mapping, but not a get. We want to delete, right? So let's do that. So this will be a delete mapping. It's going to have the same URL mapping, user / and then user ID. Let me stop the server. Same ending user ID here. We're going to do a public. I'm not going to return anything, just void, and then it says delete user, and I'm going to parse the user ID from the path variable. So path variable, and user ID, and I'm going to map it to an integer ID, and we're just going to use the repository to remove this, right? So we're going to say user repository. Dot delete by ID. There it is, and we can pass in the ID. Okay, and we'll need to import the delete mapping. There we go. All right, so let's try it out. Let's rerun this. Let's restart the server. Okay, let's refresh this. And let's see. Let's remove here WW. Okay, notice that it's been removed, right? So this were two queries, right? There was one query first to send out the delete, right? And then there was another query to go fetch the users again, brand new, right? To refresh this this content. Okay, so there it is. We're now able to remove users that shouldn't be here, right? And we are re-updating the DOM brand new. Excellent.